It's Emily Gross, work at the Washington State Department of Commerce, and I'm your session host today. We have two presenters to speak on the topic of homeownership, and I'm going to introduce them in just a second after I do just a couple housekeeping items. I'm sure you've all heard this today already, but please silence your phones. And please be sure to fill out the session evaluation, which you'll find on the Housing Washington website, that helps us get your feedback and incorporate it into planning for next year. So if there's something you like or didn't like, please let us know. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenters. We have Emily Northrup, who's Grants Administrator in the Homeownership Unit at the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, and Ann Campbell, who's the Managing Director of the Homeownership Unit at the Washington State Department of Commerce. So are you going to go first? Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Hey, y'all, how are you doing? Yeah, this is my first Housing Washington, so I'm having like a blast, and I hope that that carries over. So my name is Emily Northrup. I'm a grants administrator with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. I'm a bit of a new kid here. I started in February. Before that, I was doing nonprofit work in Texas, helping folks get into housing. And so I'm just absolutely thrilled to be on this side of the house, helping people. It's something I'm very passionate about, something my team is passionate about, and I'm so grateful that I landed here. So today, I have the opportunity to tell you about a really exciting new program that we at the Commission are just thrilled to roll out, a Homeownership Assistance Fund, the HAF program. And myself and my colleague, Rich Zwicker, are administering this on behalf of the Commission. So the Homeowners Assistance Fund was a part of ARPA, signed by President Biden into law a little over a year ago. It appropriated about $173 million to the state of Washington to help homeowners who were facing pandemic-related mortgage hardships. And so, I'm sorry? Oh. So it appropriated $173 million to the state of Washington to help with homeownership related expenses. And it does two things. So first, it provides grants of up to $60,000 for homeowners who have fallen behind on their mortgage because of a pandemic related expense. And it also provides funding for the network of housing counselors, civil legal aid attorneys, and the Washington Homeownership Resource Hotline for the next 2 years. So this program has several eligible uses. It is for Washington state homeowners that are living in their homes, so owner occupied properties, who are having difficulty, some sort of financial hardship because of the pandemic. Also, these homeowners to be eligible would be at or below 100% of AMI, area median income, for the county in which they reside. Small multifamily units like duplexes, triplexes, or quadplexes are eligible for the program, as are manufactured homes that are on rented property. What this program specifically is not for is for rental, the purchase of rental or investment properties. It is not to make improvements to a home that you already own, and we will not be making forward payments on behalf of mortgage holders. So this is not moving forward. We're not paying utilities. This is only for folks that are already have an issue and are having difficulties paying their either mortgage, homeowners association or condo association fees, taxes, or other related expenses. So like I said, there's several potential uses: delinquent mortgage payments, insurance, taxes, homeownership related expenses, HOA, COA fees. It's not for making forward payments. So if you think you need assistance, how do you get a hold of HAF? The first thing you do is call the Washington State Homeownership Resource Center hotline for an assessment and a referral to a housing counselor. Once you've been referred to a housing counselor, you're going to work with that person, and they will help evaluate all the available options for you. They'll go through your finances, they'll talk to you about your mortgage, they will make sure that your loan servicer has met and fulfilled all of the obligations on their end. And then they can help you either advocate for you or come up with a plan to help bring your mortgage current, or find some other option to help you keep your home. Housing counselors are really integral to this process because they're going to help the homeowner throughout the entire process through evaluation, application, and then can help with follow-up. However, we do have an option for self-application to the program, but in those instances, assistance is limited to $15,000. So the commission has, we've set several outreach goals. We know that outreach is the essential element to making this program successful. And so we've set several goals to help meet those goals. And primarily, one of the most important ones is statewide distribution of funds. We want to make sure that everyone in the state has access to this program. And we also want to reach into underserved communities. So we've identified target groups of homeowners who have been hardest hit by the pandemic and that have had the least access to other type of assistance programs. And so those are going to be folks that might be outside of traditional banking. Maybe they have a hard money loan. Maybe they're from a community that doesn't predominantly speak English. Or they're from a community of color that maybe does not have deep ties to the traditional banking system. And so those are the folks that we really want to target because they've not only been hit hardest by COVID, but they also have less opportunity for other forms of assistance. And the way that we want to do that is to build trust with groups that have been historically excluded from home ownership by really prioritizing our partnerships with BIPOC communities and finding community-based organizations that have proven track records of working with those communities that are trusted messengers and can help us spread the word. So our outreach campaign is live, it's underway, digital marketing. You might see some of our ads on social media. If you do see them, it's $4, so maybe don't click them every time you see them. We also have television and radio ads are live in targeted markets. So please keep your ears tuned to the dial for those. And our outreach team has made contact with over 200 community-based organizations to help activate their networks and amplify our message. And that last piece, making contact with CBOs, is something that we are really, really proud of because we're hoping that we can parlay those partnerships into long-term community partnerships to help advance homeownership across the state. So if you would like to help homeowners, please share the Homeownership Assistance Hotline there, 877-894-4663. Get in contact with those amazing advocates and they can get your client connected to a housing counselor who can help them. You can visit our landing page, washingtonhalf.org, to find more information about the program. And you can also reach out to the HAF team, myself, my colleague, Rich, Kat, and Margaret in communications and marketing. I really can't stress how eager we are to talk to new people about HAF. So if you have questions, if you have an event that you would like for us to come speak at, if you would like to provide information to someone in your network or someone in your community about this program, please reach out and we're happy to get you whatever in your hands, to help us spread the message. And so the program is live. We have about 550 folks that are currently in the application pipeline. We've funded, we have about 120 families that have either been helped or are waiting for their funds to disperse. And so we've obligated over $5 million. We've been open for 90 days, just one quarter. And we're really thrilled with the work that we've done and are so grateful for our partners. Some of our housing counselors are here. Hi, guys, lovely to see you. And Elizabeth from the hotline is here too. And so we just really want to thank you so much for your partnership and your work. These guys are doing the heavy lifting at HAF. And so we really just want this program to get into your communities. And if you know folks that are struggling, if you remember one thing, call the hotline. That is the key to HAF. So I'm going to pass it over to Ann here in just a moment. If you have questions about HAF, we'll have some time at the end of the presentation. So or you can text them in the Whova app if you don't want to forget, and we'll check that too. So thanks so much for your time. Oh. Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Whose earrings up here? Sorry, my little
Thanks.
crow brain going out. Hey, everyone. Oh, wow. If I hold that, it's not going to be good. Let's try that instead. Can y'all hear me? You can all hear me. Hello, I am Ann Campbell. I am the managing director for our newly formed homeownership unit. And how do I make this work? There we go. So the new homeownership unit is in the Department of Commerce, where we strengthen communities. And we do that through a wide range of programs that help everything from communities put infrastructure in the ground to helping small businesses expand and large businesses to come into our state. The homeownership unit is the direct result of advocacy by all of you to put an emphasis on housing to its own exclusive domain. And our homeownership unit is part of the housing unit division, or the housing division, which covers everything from multifamily rental properties to homeownership assistance to rental assistance to foreclosure and other things. So the homeownership unit specifically is comprised of 3 primary programs. That includes the Manufactured Mobile Home Relocation Assistance Program, which helps our residents in the state who live in manufactured home communities that are closing and they need to find new places to live. And the program offers cash assistance to the homeowners in the community, and also in some instances to the park owners themselves to facilitate the process of the closure. We have our foreclosure fairness program, which works in partnership with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, and with the Department of Financial Institutions, and we put together homeowners who have been referred, who are in the foreclosure process, with mediators who work with them, their lending institutions, to find a softer landing than perhaps the traditional foreclosure process would allow. And this could include the people staying in their homes. It could include short sales. It could include going straight to foreclosure. And I'll talk more about this in a minute, but I think it's really telling that in this quarter alone, we have had 131 referrals to the foreclosure fairness program. And that is a direct result of the federal and the state eviction and foreclosure moratoria being lifted. So things are now moving forward. Now, there are also a number of people out there who have mortgages that are not fixed rate. And as we've all seen, interest rates are climbing through the ceiling. And it's one thing to make a house payment when your interest rate is 3%. It's another when it's up at 6.5%. And then last, but certainly not least, are the homeownership capital programs that we have, which will grant money to organizations for the construction or the acquisition of homes for people entering the homeownership arena. And so with that, we also have several special provisions that the legislature has invested money in, and that includes $900,000 for technical assistance for households in South King County who have been or are being displaced because their manufactured mobile home community is closing or being converted to non-residential uses. We have $100,000 in technical assistance for pre-purchase efforts and resident outreach and engagement activities for those same residents in South King County. And we are finishing up the contracting phase to contract with Grounded Solutions to provide technical assistance and training to organizations that want to expand their existing community land trusts, or they are looking at starting their own community land trust to grow that model. And then last, but certainly not least, in the special provisions is the recently published work of the Homeownership Disparities Work Group. And I want to take a minute to just say thank you to everyone on that group who put in their time, their effort, and their energy. The organization was originally supposed to comprise of 12 members who represent a broad array in the homeownership arena. Well, as y'all know, Commerce likes to do things a little extra. So instead of having 12, we had 32. The director of our agency chaired the group, so that would be Director Brown. But I want to do a special thanks for Eco Northwest and BDS Planning and Urban Design, because those consulting groups partnered for facilitation and communication to ensure all of the voices on that 32-member panel were heard, not just listened to, but actually heard. There were a total of 5 formal meeting recommendations, and of those, they fall under 2 things: supply and personal financial situations. And that could be anything from needing to gather documents or to do some credit counseling to understanding how to navigate through the home buying process to get to yes, rather than a one-way stop to no. The other issues were increasing, of course, affordable housing increasing the purchase of affordable housing through land acquisition and preparation, increase the existing amount per household that was being invested for their assistance, broaden, expand, and otherwise make existing lending products more flexible, modify the existing programs to make them more accessible to nonprofit organizations and the end users, and last but not least, have a more expansive set of programs to help people sustain or stay in their homes through the entire process. So the recommendations to increase supply are increased funding for land acquisition and the pre-development process, because there's not a lot of seed money out there for that. This presentation is also available electronically. But the Washington State Housing Finance Commission has a land acquisition program. So increasing the resources for that program and finding other ways to be more flexible to help support that pre-development work. Doing more support for nonprofits in financing, building, and offering all sorts of homeownership products. Helping our local governments to improve their zoning and their siting requirements in order to make building homes and homeownership easier in our communities. And then certainly last but not least, and I say this as somebody who has worked in state government for 25 years, reducing the bureaucracy it takes to manage our funds. Our direct assistance is to increase funding. That's increased funding for the organizations. That's increasing funding for the human beings that we are helping to buy homes. That includes down payment assistance, incentives to sellers potentially, expanding the aforementioned foreclosure and debt mediation programs, and also educating those in the real estate realm about the various homeownership programs that are available out there. And so with that making a good pathway moving forward. Yes, sorry, Emily. Yes, absolutely. So everyone, this is Emily Grossman. Emily Grossman basically did the internal spearhead work for the homeownership disparities group. Oh, absolutely. You go back to if I can figure out how.
Oh, you're back.
This is not my laptop.
It's okay if it's
This one or that
there
one?
you go. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to add something to this slide before we move on, because I don't want anyone to get the impression that racist policies and practices, both historical and current, did not come up and were not a point of discussion within this group. They were a very prevalent and dominant and significant part of the discussion and a significant driver of the recommendations. Now, I don't know how many of you here are in policy and have ever worked with developing a legislative report or legislative recommendations, but you kind of get into the situation where you have to either prioritize or arrange recommendations into an actionable bucket and a not actionable bucket. So because we wanted to give the legislature what we wanted, we took a certain set of recommendations and kind of put them up front as these are the 12 short-term recommendations for you legislators for next session. And then there's another category of the big, gnarly, systemic, racist issues that need to be addressed, but maybe it's going to take some bigger investments, some new programming, lots more outreach and stakeholdering. So maybe it's a little bit of a long-term effort. So I just wanted to point that out before we move on. Yeah.
So I apologize for not pointing that out, Emily, and thank you so much for bringing that back and centering that, because that is what the work group was all about. Now I've lost my train of thought. Here we go. So speaking of the improving homeownership rates for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in Washington report, as Emily spoke to, there were 12 direct actionable items that the work group recommended, and Commerce has that in the report, and we have the items that we can do now that do not require legislative action. And then we have the actions or recommendations that require legislative action in order to implement. Because this report is not going to sit on a shelf and be dusty and be forgotten. This report was central in the decision package writing, which is where agency requested funds and legislation go to the governor's office for consideration in the biennial budget. And this report was front and center in both the homeownership unit decision package as well as in the housing package that was put forth for the Housing Trust Fund. So this report, the Black Homeownership Initiative recommendations and action items help to inform those decision packages as well, as did the 2019 manufactured home study that talked about the challenges in the manufactured home communities. But so what is Homeowner doing now to enact the recommendations of the work group in their report? We've created the homeownership unit. We are in the process of standing up small technical groups to address, as Emily put it, the big gnarly issues that still remain to be chewed on to develop. We are continuing our ongoing consultation with Dr. J and her team at the Office of Equity. We are, a different part of our agency is working together with some consultants to develop the Community Reinvestment Act plan for the legislature to invest, I believe it's $100 million in homeownership and some other items specifically for our communities of color, our Black families, our Indigenous households. And last but not least, we have a $25 million notice of funding opportunity availability coming out in the middle of this month for capital projects for homeownership. With that, I will segue into the decision packages that we put out. We have $5 million for technical assistance for homeownership organizations, but very specifically to fund culturally specific organizations to increase visibility of and access to existing homeownership programs, as well as grow them in our BIPOC communities. We have a $5 million request in to help prepare people for homeownership. We have $10 million to both increase the work that the Foreclosure Fairness Program has been working on, as well as to create an on-demand technical training tool for mediators to become specialty foreclosure mediators. On that note, as I spoke to earlier, we have a more than doubling of the referrals for mediation. Prior to the pandemic, we had, I want to say, yeah, here we go. We had 67 mediators in 2019, and mediating for foreclosure is a technical job, a technical role. You have to know about the financing structures. We only have 53 now. And that is significant, not only because the caseload is growing with that 131 referrals just this quarter, but it is significant because our small communities, our very rural communities, didn't have enough mediators before the pandemic. And now families and households may have to drive 100 miles to go to an in-person mediation. Mediation can be done online, but mediation can be requested to be in person. And so in person you go. So it's vitally important that these programs get funded so that we can manifest the recommendations of the work group to help end the systemic racism that we are all challenged with removing, mediating, and stopping the continuance of. And with that, the last thing that I did a decision package for was to request additional resources for homeownership capital projects, $50 million. Because as we all know, we are missing homes. We have no supply. We need the supply in order to make more homeowners to help ease some of the cost burdens by the shortages. And on that note, the $25 million notice of funding availability, segueing back to the recommendations of the work group, One of the items that they spoke to specifically was decreasing bureaucracy. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to be releasing a notice of funding availability that is streamlined, that is more targeted and more focused and has plain talk in it, for those of you familiar with that term, to make it easier for people to understand and to make the tools more accessible to a broader range of organizations. We will be having webinars, technical assistance and application webinars. Yes, ma'am. So the question was, are rural and urban designations part of how the funding will be disseminated? And the answer to that is yes, because the statute that we operate under, which is the same as the Housing Trust Fund statute, requires that where possible with qualified applications, that a minimum percentage be invested in our rural communities. So with that, right next. That pretty much wraps up my conversation. I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to ask you to please go and read the homeowners or the Homeownership Disparities Work Group report. It is on our website. It's on a number of other websites. It has great analysis and actionable items that we can all do in order to remove the systemic racist issues, policies, laws, and processes that are in place. And I would very much welcome questions, feedback, commentary. We are finally getting staffed up to the point where we can manifest the meetings where I ask those in the homeownership community to partake in the building of our new unit in the division. So with that, thank you so much for your time.
Stick around. Yeah. Okay. Hi, who has a question for either Anne or Emily? Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to repeat the question so that the recording will pick it up. Emily, the question is for you. How much is going to be available? There's currently 1 million. How much will be available?
No, we have obligated a little over $5 million already. Grants are up to $60,000 per person.
What's the cap?
How much has been obligated to? Oh, of total program funding, 140? It's about 120 million. Thanks, Rich.
Other questions? Go back there. Yeah.
Are on the owner contract. Are they still eligible? Sounds like they were still eligible for the house money.
So the question is, sorry, the question is for Emily regarding the HALF program. If the homeowners are on a contract, are they still eligible for the program?
I would hesitate to answer that. I'm not personally a housing counselor, so I would encourage that person to call the hotline and get connected with someone who can advocate for them.
Is that okay? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
So manufactured homes that are owner occupied on rented land are eligible. So.
Correct. So there currently there's some difficulties in that program to get funding for owner occupied homes.
Thank you, Rich. Rich Wicker, my colleague, he's a grants administrator here at the commission.
We're tag teaming this presentation.
Hi, everybody. Rich from the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. The question is owner occupied or private lender. That doesn't work traditionally well with the current program that we have. So we're creating some extra assistance down the line, kind of sub programs, for lack of a better term. So we can get those. They're going to have a lot more underwriting issues because they're very ripe for fraud, right? So Uncle George and Cousin Jim get together and say, hey, let's pretend we have a contract and I owe you money on it type thing. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So currently they're getting held up. So you get an initial denial, but they're being held while we work on a program to address those.
that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
This question's for Ann. The upcoming $25 million in mid-October for encouraging first-time homeownership, could that be used for the creation of community land trust?
The question is for Anne, and it's whether in the upcoming $25 million NOFA, if community land trust projects are eligible.
No, what I heard was that whether or not it can be used to form a community land trust. Is that the question?
To form a new community land trust.
So these are capital dollars, so they cannot be used for the formation of an organization. However, we do have the NOFA results with grounded solutions that will be coming out, or not the NOFA, excuse me. We are contracting with grounded solutions to provide technical assistance for the creation and support of community land trusts. So grounded solutions on behalf of the state of Washington will be doing Washington-centric community land trust development workshops and outreach. So while it doesn't pay to form the organization, it will help to navigate some of the administrative challenges.
Other questions? Yes. Yes. So our decision package, by the way, decision package is a budget request from the legislature. So every year we tell the legislature what we would like to have. We asked the legislature for money that would help put us on par with where we were when we were sort of at the max of the CARES Act dollars. We don't want there to be a big cliff of those just like immediately falling off. So I can't remember the number, and we don't have our program staff here for that, but we did ask for more than we usually ask for to help kind of bridge that gap. Does that answer your question? Yes, go ahead. Yeah, so typically the way that our rental assistance funding is administered is we contract it directly to counties, and then counties then subcontract those funds down to the community organizations within their communities, within their counties, and use those organizations to kind of do the outreach to the individuals and families who need the funds. So I would say contact your county human services department and find out how to get a hold of some of that. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, go ahead. Right. Yeah. The question is the $25 million, whether that's going to be a one-time shot or whether it will be sustained funding.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question. And I have requested an additional $50 million in the biennial budget for ongoing homeownership capital projects. Source of funding is a hotly debated topic. And it is one of the topics that is part of the gnarly discussions. I'm never going to let go of that phrase, that the work group struggled with, and that we are going to be working with our small technical groups to identify what would be considered a sustainable funding source.
Yes. That's a good question. So the question is for organizations who have both multifamily programs and homeownership programs, whether the per agency cap will be divided up so that they can sort of meet the cap in both categories. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, prior to becoming the homeownership managing director, slight hiatus in the broadband world. I was the resource allocation and lending manager for the Housing Trust Fund for 5 years. So the answer to your question, Brian, a great question, by the way, is the funding cap is going to be two separate and distinct critters. You'll have, if your organization does rental housing, then the cap that Nate Lichty in the multifamily housing unit put in place will be the cap for that part of your organization. And the homeownership cap that my organization is going to be having will be separate from that. They will not be added together. And I am a very firm believer that we need more of both, because homeownership is part of that housing ecosystem. And the more home buyers you have, the more rental places and overcrowded housing you free up to, because it's part of an overall healthy ecosystem. So having caps that combine don't make a lot of sense in my head in order to make that a healthy ecosystem.
Other questions? Yes.
The other thing, the question I did have though was also around the caps. My wonder was, are the caps of those basically the 4 or 2 million per project and 4 million per biennium, is that supposed to be applying? Does that include the previous year's awards as well, or is that just for this 25 specifically?
Do you want to repeat it and answer?
Well, okay. So the question is I think the question is do prior years projects that were selected for funding, does that dollar amount count towards the cap that will be announced with the $25 million notice of funding availability? Do I have that correct? Okay. So thank you for the question. And I feel like you're making me unravel all of the Christmas presents on Thanksgiving early. So with that rather centric comment, the answer to that is no. This is going to be a clean slate year, and there will be more details and more happy little surprises. And I'm not a big fan of surprises in general, so when I say happy, I mean happy. In the notice of funding availability that we will be announcing.
Who's next? Yes.
For those housing authorities that may have homeownership programs already kind of baked into what they do. And if so, what is it been like? If not, does it make sense? Or is this going to be kind of a duplication of your office?
The question is whether for this new funding availability, whether we've had whether Commerce has had conversations with public housing authorities about the program. And if so, what have those conversations, I think, looked like? That's your question, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Is it for the $25 million? Oh, okay. Okay.
Being able to offer this potentially and all voucher holders after a period of time have access to homeowners, right? So, but if this is something else that we can also talk about.
Okay.
Well, I'm not entirely certain I fully understand the question. So if I don't answer it, please forgive me and let's talk later. But I think the overall question is, what kind of conversations am I having or are we having with homeownership organizations, including housing authorities, about how to improve the program? And I had one meeting in August, and then I was pulled deep into decision package writing, and I've finally hiring a new AA3 and she accepted on Friday. She'll be starting on the 16th.
AA3 is an administrative assistant.
Oh,
but-
sorry. I'm thrilled to pieces because she will be helping to set up those ongoing conversations with everyone as a whole, with unique groups, with individual organizations, if they want to have those kind of discussions, to help building up that partnership to actually manifest a homeownership unit that is flexible and able to meet the needs where possible of all of those organizations.
Great. Yes, hi. Mhm. Oh.
So the rural community challenges that we face, with those populations that need support and help, and understand that these programs are for them. They are for them, and they don't have to look at homeowners as this scary thing that was never intended for them. So when you take on board, we're happy to help.
Yakima is all in.
Well, and to that note, I want to say thank you very much for that. Let's exchange contact information. But you're talking very specifically about one of the reasons behind part of our decision package request, which was to help individuals understand that homeownership is for them. You know, citing the presentations from earlier today, doing what we can to swap those inequities around, but to make it not a big mysterious process, make it very clear, make it plain that you don't have to win the lottery to buy a home. And that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there? I guess we will I think there's still a few minutes left. So if nobody has anything further that they'd like to ask, we will just adjourn go ahead. Yeah, so the question is about down payment assistance, I think generally, what do you get?
Hi there. Excellent question. I'm Lisa DeBrock. I'm the director of the Homeownership Division at the Housing Finance Commission. And there are lots of different down payment assistance programs across the state. So first off, I would suggest you visit our booth because there's a multitude of different programs. Our main program is called, well, there's a few different ones called Home Advantage. Typically helps with 4% of the loan amount. That covers the minimum down payment of 3% plus an additional % for closing costs. We also have further down payment assistance programs depending upon the area of the state you're purchasing in. So up to $55,000 if you're below 80% of area median income in the Seattle area. We also partner with HomeSite and many other nonprofits to offer multiple layers of assistance. So often there's a first, second, third, fourth, and other layers of assistance. So it depends upon your situation, but happy to discuss any particular situation with you, but we are usually the base of that program. So thank you for the question.
Okay, we have a question in the back. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you make it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Bettis, Deputy Director with the Washington Homeownership Resource Center. We are that 877 number that Emily kept flashing up there for the homeownership hotline for the state. So good first point of entry for the HAF program, but also for folks who want to become home buyers who want to become homeowners in the state of Washington. So we are serving statewide. So please know that regardless of whether folks you're working with live in King County or Whitman County, where I live, that we are there for them. And so, hearing the shout out about Yakima and everything, I just wanted folks to know that we're here and that we're that great sort of starting point for someone who wants to own a home. As you mentioned earlier, it's a very mystifying process, but sometimes it just takes that starting point, that first phone call. So that's who we are. We're that first phone call. We're that friendly voice on the other end who will answer and be able to do that general intake, listen to folks' questions or needs around homeownership, and then be able to get them to an awesome HUD certified housing counselor to talk about all of these different and great programs that might be available to them. Whether it's, hey, I want to become a homeowner, but can't afford a down payment, or it's, I'm a homeowner and I'm afraid of losing my home because I'm struggling.
Hey, Elizabeth, is there any cost for your services?
No, they are free. The services are free.
And also, do you have to be under an AMI limit to get help for you guys, or is it everyone in the state? Everyone. They can help everyone.
Just call. And there was a question up here. Yeah.
For the October 19th, NOVA, what do I Google? What's the easiest way to put that?
Commerce? Okay, so.
How do you find information about the upcoming NOFA?
So the easiest way to find information is to get on the mailing list, and also to go to commerce.wa.gov. And the website's on the slide, but it's a little hard to read. But in the About Us at the commerce.wa.gov website, there is a page that is all about every single request for proposal, request for qualifications, notice of funding availabilities, notices of funding opportunities, all of that in one spot. And that's across every single commerce program, and we have hundreds.
Yes.
So the question was, do I know when will the applications for the $25 million notice of funding availability be due? By law, we have to have applications open for a minimum of 90 days. And being cognizant that sometimes that 90-day window can be on a weekend or can be on a holiday, which we don't want to do, we are looking at the middle of January as a due date.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, go ahead.
No, that's a great question. So the question was, do we know when the awards will be announced after the due date? And do we know when they will need to be contracted by? Well, while we are a new homeownership unit, we have the existing Housing Trust Fund handbook, and there has not been sufficient time or resources available to have a conversation with all of you on how to update that to make it manifest into a homeownership only handbook of policies and procedures. That's on the to-do list in the next year. And so I am not making drastic changes to the award process other than to say that I can't give you an answer by when the awards will be announced, because that hasn't yet been determined, but it also needs to take into account construction windows. It needs to take into account how many applications we receive, all of those kind of variables. My estimate would be 6 to 8 weeks at the most after the award, the applications come in, and the funds will need to be under contract with that same sort of soft window of 3 to 6 months, depending again on the project itself. So those we can be a little bit flexible too.
Other questions? Comments? Suggestions, insults? I think we're good. Then yeah, great, thanks. Then we will wrap it up, and I assume the panelists will stick around in case you want to come up and talk to them privately too. Thank you. It's because of the lights.